You may have noticed within the last month or so, the Daily Mail ran a great article highlighting a rather spectacular instance of a home for sale in the San Francisco area, which, by the way, is the most heavily regulated community in the nation. They have rules and laws and ordinances that I couldn't even begin to imagine. Now, this spectacular beauty is a 765 square foot wood shack in the city's Outer Mission neighborhood, built in 1906, and was originally advertised for sale at $350,000. This is quote unquote, but the price quickly rose under competing bids. Wow. It's now north of $400,000. This is something that actually puts that other instance to shame. We have right here a home in the Palo Alto area that is a tiny 180 square foot shack, selling for just under $2 million. Palo Alto, by the way, is in the Bay Area community, if I remember correctly, and is also in a rather well-to-do, very heavily regulated area. So what we see here is that policies can have a big impact on the cost of a home. Now, what I wanted to see is here in Texas, what does the cost of a home in the fastest growing city in the nation look like for about $1 million? So what we see here is a home listed for, I believe it's $1.2 million in the San Marcos area. This 3-bedroom, 6-bathroom, 7,900 square foot home can be yours for just $1.2 million. So what we see here is an illustration, a real-life example of how certain policies can affect different home prices. Regulations tend to come in many forms, and they're imposed by many different types of governments, but they all do the same thing, and that is they make achieving the American dream harder. Just a quick data point here, the National Association of Home Builders recently did a study where they estimated that regulations imposed at every level of government increase the cost of a house by 25%. So the next time that you go out and purchase a house, 25% of that is due to government regulation. So what do I mean when I talk about affordable housing? I think the best way I can simplify it is it refers to the ability of a person to purchase a home. And there is good news for Texans. Here in the Lone Star State, we have a reputation as being a state that has an affordable, that's an affordable place to live and work. And that reputation, despite what we tend to hear in the news, is alive and well. This is some data from the Texas Real Estate Center at the Texas A&M University. What we see here on this chart is the illustration of the Texas price gap. The yellow line on the bottom represents the average cost of a home in Texas. As you can see in the U.S., the cost of a home is much higher. Now, interestingly, it's not just the median home price that is much lower here. We actually have a relatively competitive median income in Texas as well. According to the Census Bureau, the median income in Texas is $51,900. In the U.S., we have a median income of $53,000. So we can see that our incomes are relatively competitive with the nation, and at the same time, our home values are much less. Now, that said, there is a little bit of bad news. We do have here in the state, since the end of the Great Recession, since the 2007 recession, what we see is that home prices and household incomes are tracking in two different directions. And I'll get into why I think that is here in just a moment. but the Real Estate Center provides another great-looking graph that better illustrates this point. So from 2011 to 2014, what we see is that the median home price has increased by about 24%. Over that same time, income's risen by about 11%. And the real household income is up by about 6%. And so we see that there's a little bit of divergence when it comes to income and home prices, which could signal that there is trouble ahead. Now, influencing both income and the cost of housing are the two very distinct governing approaches that we have here in Texas. One is the model adopted by the state, which tends to rely on a low-tax, limited government outlook. And the second is what I think Governor Greg Abbott described very well. It's the Californization of Texas. So at the state level, really what we as conservatives have been able to do is advance an ideology that emphasizes the power and the opportunity of a low-tax, limited government environment. One with a set of predictable regulations. And through this governing approach, we've been able to create a very dynamic economy with lots of jobs, lots of income, lots of opportunity. It's been very successful. On the tax side of the equation, what we see is that we are about 10th in the nation, according to the Tax Foundation's State Business Tax Climate Index. So we rank very competitively when it comes to our tax climate. That's very inviting for both jobs and also puts money in, keeps money in people's pockets. On the spending side of the equation, I think conservatives deserve a lot well, conservatives enjoyed a lot of success during the last session. What we as a community did is we banded together and we told the legislature, ideally, here is where we would like to see spending kept. No more than 6.5% growth, an all funds budget of $215 billion, discretionary spending of $142 billion. The legislature actually did better than that. And I give Dr. Ginn and his team a lot of credit because they helped lead the charge for restraining the growth of state spending. Again, smaller government at the state level is really helping to excite the economy. On the regulatory side of things, the state is doing lots of good things, I think. We're pushing back on EPA's Clean Power Plan. We did some good things when it comes to consumer lending and consumer finance during the last session. And also the Endangered Species Act seems to be in greater prominence. Now, when it comes to local government, what we see is actually things are trending in the opposite direction. We seem to be going against the low-tax, limited government model that has made the state attain such success. When it comes to property taxes, we are the 14th highest in the nation, according to the Tax Foundation. Texas's local governments collect, on average, about $1,600 per person. That was as of 2012. When it comes to our outsized fiscal footprint at the local level, we have a lot of debt. The latest Texas Bond Review Board figures show that local debt in Texas has reached $338 billion. When you compare that to the top 10 mega states, we rank second behind only New York. California actually does much better on their local debt per capita. Texas is bigger, but not population-wise. So, and when you look at the trends, what you see is local debt is growing much faster than population and inflation, which is a popular metric, as we all know, with conservatives. When you look at a timeline from 2001 to 2011, you see that population and inflation are increasing by about 53%. You look at debt over that same period, it's increased by 122%. So it's outpacing population and inflation by a factor of 2 to 1. This has obvious implications for property taxes. And then what we're going to talk about a little bit is the excessive regulatory environment that exists at the local level. Now, January of last year, I think then Governor-elect Greg Abbott did a great job of capturing exactly what is happening at the local level when it comes to our regulatory environment. Governor Abbott said, Texas is being Californianized, and you may not even be noticing it. It's being done at the city level with bag bans, fracking bans, tree cutting bans. We're forming a patchwork quilt of bans and rules and regulations that is eroding the Texas model. Now, that said, there are a few bright spots. We have places like Houston, which obviously do not have zoning requirements. They have some other stricter ordinances that I think influence housing in a negative way. But again, to their credit, there are no zoning requirements. We also have places like Von Ormy, Texas, which are keeping the cost of housing down and income in people's pockets by doing innovative things like eliminating the property tax and moving to a sales tax. They also go out of their way to cut regulations. Their city regulations are almost non-existent. They do quite well to rely on the private market. So before I launch into the city of Austin, what I want to say is that I think both sides recognize there's an affordability crisis in Austin. And I say that based on comments that not only Mayor Adler has made, but also the Austin Independent School District Superintendent Dr. Paul Cruz, who recently cited soaring housing costs as one of the driving factors that was contributing to declining enrollment. During the 2014 school year, what we saw is an exodus of about 1,200 students from AISD, with future projections of more student loss. And again, what's driving that is homes are becoming unaffordable for the average person in Austin. Again, Mayor Adler made similar comments during his State of the City speech, where he flat out acknowledged Austin is becoming unaffordable. Now, I think he rightly cites the fact that we need to make things cost less and ensure that families have more to spend, though I think we would probably go about that in a little bit different ways. So Austin's affordability problem, where are we exactly? Well, it takes about 31% of the median income to purchase and maintain a house in Austin. That's not only much higher than the average, but it's much higher than what we have historically seen. And as we know, as more money goes out the door to support things like housing, we have less money for people to keep in their pockets, participate in the economy, and invest in themselves and their families. Now, there are a lot of things. I think we could probably spend days examining Austin and how it is exactly becoming unaffordable. But there are really three areas that I want to focus on in particular right now, and that's impact fees, onerous regulations, and delays, because I think these put an interesting face on the issue and really kind of drive home the fact that a lot of the regulations and the laws and the ordinances that we're seeing come up from the local level are contributing to the problem. So when it comes to impact fees, what we've seen is that the City of Austin relatively recently updated their impact fee schedule so that these are impact fees, by the way, are one-time fees charged to developers to pay for the construction of new homes and connect to water and wastewater lines. A lot of people tend to see these as hidden taxes, which are passed on to the consumer. And recently, the City of Austin updated their fee schedule in such a way that the maximum allowable fee assessed for water was $5,400. The wastewater fee was $2,200, and so you have a total of about $7,600 in total allowable impact fees. That's up pretty significantly from 2007 when it was just north of $5,000. And as you can see, it fairly well blows away the competition. And again, these fees are not something that developers just absorb. These are items that are passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices.
No transportation in this?
No, sir. This is just water and wastewater. So you're right. Transportation is another area where we are seeing the impact fee have come into the conversation.
This is, all these towns are they just the Austin region? Are they distributed all across that? I don't know the geography.
Yes, and so what we're seeing here is just an analysis of the central Texas area. And so you can see that Austin by far dominates the landscape.
The red on the left-hand side, what time frame?
I believe that is 2007.
Are impact fees just the construction fees to be able to
So yeah,
pay, or is this what, I'm sorry, is this a utility fee?
so when you connect to, when you're a developer and you are constructing a new home and you want to connect to the sewer line or now there's a lot of bad stuff being passed by the city of Austin that I think could rightfully contributes to our unaffordability crisis. But one of the things that I've really taken notice of is this visitability ordinance. This is an ordinance which was passed recently by the city of Austin, and it requires that all new homes built within the city limits be visitable for people in wheelchairs. Now, I think their heart's in the right place, but they went about this in the wrong way. The cost for everyone to install these types of ramps in their homes is $2,000. And so again, this is another fee that is passed on to the consumer that further contributes to the unaffordability of it. This kind of one-size-fits-all approach, by the way, is to accommodate just a very small portion of the population. The U.S. Census Bureau estimates that only about 2% of the population nationwide is in a wheelchair, but yet this type of ordinance is imposed on 100% of all new homes constructed in the city. I don't think this is the right way, and I think it very obviously contributes to the problem of unaffordability. And then we come to the issue of delays. What we see is that Austin has some problems when it comes to doing things like approving permits or moving forward with helping developers moving forward with construction projects. Now, the University of Texas put out some interesting information here recently that said that the city's Planning and Development Review Department, as a result of their delays, contributed about $60 a month to the average person, to the average renter's bill. And so the reason for that increased rent as it gets passed on to you and I is that the developers themselves, as they're waiting, they're incurring things like interest, carry cost, overhead. Time is money. And the more time it takes at the local level to allow development and growth to happen, the more it's going to cost you and I to consume the end product. And so I want to leave you with this. If anything, policies matter, especially when it comes to the regulatory environment and how they relate to housing affordability. We really need to, I think, reassess where we are when it comes to local regulations. There's an obvious correlation to me between the onerous local regulatory environment that we see and the increase in housing, at least in part. And, you know, all that said, I do want to leave on a positive note. We are still a great place to live and work. Texas is still an affordable place. You know, I think that, you know, that's a very obvious sign by the, you know, you look at the economy, you look at the population growth, you look at all the great things that are happening in Texas. People are coming here because it's a success. We need to just make sure that it stays a success. With that, thank you for your time.